You are standing in front of the open closet, a half-packed suitcase on the bed, the zipper still open, and you realize it right now. This is already the third time this year you have started packing this same suitcase without actually leaving. What you do not know yet, standing in front of this half-packed suitcase, there are clear steps for this, tested by psychologists and by people who actually made it out, so that this time is the last one. Your co-worker asked you last week why you do not just leave, the way anyone leaves a relationship that stopped working. In that moment, you genuinely did not know how to answer. Several clinical psychologists confirm it. This kind of breakup is structurally different from any other, in a way that has nothing to do with how it feels in your own head. Therapists who work with people affected by narcissistic relationships often call this the trauma bond, a connection that, paradoxically, gets reinforced by the back and forth between pain and reconciliation. This mechanism is still debated among specialists and does not replace professional support, but it lines up with a simple, well-established principle of behavioral psychology. An unpredictable reward binds tighter than a constant one. And why does no one around you seem to understand how hard this actually is? The reason is rarely something specific to your case. This mechanism is almost never recognizable from the outside. Someone who has never lived it will always struggle to picture it. From the outside, the logic looks simple. From the inside, every attempt to leave runs into something that weighs deeper than a lack of willpower. A viewer wrote to me after the last video. He had packed this same suitcase 4 times in 2 years, and every time, one bouquet of flowers the next morning was enough to undo all of it again. Only when he wrote down those 4 dates, one under the other, along with what had happened right before each one, did he recognize the pattern he could never see while he was living inside it. But first, this. These 6 steps are never complicated on their own. The real problem shows up right when you need them most, when the part of you that still wants to believe one more time takes up all the space. There are 6 concrete steps, in a specific order, that genuinely raise the odds this goodbye is the last one. Most people skip the 4th, and that is almost always where it falls apart. Almost 2,000 years before these 6 steps, the philosopher Epictetus wrote a single line that already anticipates the first one. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but the judgment we hold about them. First step: document before you leave, not after. Write down dates, facts, incidents, somewhere she cannot see, on a phone or a notebook she does not know about. This written record is what Epictetus meant by the only ground that truly belongs to you, your own account of events, not the events themselves. Keep it for yourself, for the days when doubt tells you that maybe you are exaggerating. Write down the moments of relief too, not just the conflicts. Those calm moments, more than the crises, are often what explain why leaving stays this hard. Reread what you wrote once a week, not every day. Doing it too often can turn into a new source of anxiety on its own. Once a week is enough to keep the picture clear. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, in essence, that dealing with the crowd damages us more than we notice, and that we should deliberately surround ourselves with people who make us better. Second step: rebuild contact with at least one person outside the relationship before you leave. Gradual isolation is what makes leaving alone feel almost impossible. That person does not have to understand everything right away. They just have to be there as one outside point of contact you can talk to when things get hard. If after months of isolation you no longer know who you can really talk to, start small. A message to an old co-worker, a call to a relative you have not seen in a long time. You do not have to explain everything to that person right away. Simply saying you are not okay, without going into detail yet, is enough to open that door again. Epictetus called this the reserve clause, preparing every action in advance, but silently adding the condition if nothing prevents it. That way, the preparation itself is already an act of freedom, not a betrayal of it. Third step. Secure the practical things in advance, not during. ID documents, some money set aside, a place to sleep for the first few nights, just in case. This kind of preparation is not cold planning in the bad sense. It matches what any major life change needs, except here it has to stay unnoticed until the very end. If access to money is limited or watched, even a small amount kept with someone you trust can make a real difference at the decisive moment, without ever showing up on a shared bank statement. Epictetus advised setting your own principles in advance, keeping them close like a rule, before the test ever arrives. That is the fourth step, the one almost everyone skips. Fourth step, the one almost everyone skips. Decide, before you leave, what will happen if she tries to reach out again. Not in the moment itself, but calmly, now, starting today. Without this decision made ahead of time, at the decisive moment every message, every call, every apology becomes an open negotiation again. With it, the answer is already fixed before the question even arrives. Write this decision down somewhere, in the same words you would actually say out loud the day the message really comes. All you will have to do is reread what you already decided, calmly. Some people share this written decision with the trusted person from step 2, so they are not carrying the responsibility of keeping it alone at the decisive moment. A viewer wrote to me a few weeks ago he had done the first 3 steps perfectly. Documented, rebuilt contact, secured the money. But he never decided in advance what he would do when the first apology text arrived. The message arrived on a Tuesday, 1 in the morning. With no decision already made, he had to improvise a response at the worst possible moment. Half asleep, afraid of getting it wrong. He went back that same week. About certain bonds. Seneca wrote that a point comes when they can no longer be untied, only cut. Modern specialists studying trauma bonds arrive at that same cutoff point from clinical data, 2,000 years apart. Fifth step, the one that matches Seneca's cutoff point directly. Cut contact completely, not gradually.
Psychologists who work on this topic agree on this one point in a striking way, even when they disagree on almost everything else.
Partially open contact opens the door to a familiar mechanism. Every small reunion sparks new hope, and that hope is enough to restart the entire cycle from zero. In practice, this means actually block the numbers, not just set them aside.
It means asking a mutual acquaintance to stop passing along forwarded messages.
The first days after a total cutoff are usually the hardest, not because the decision was wrong, but because the absence feels, physically, like real withdrawal. That same person wrote to me again, months later. The next time a message arrived at 1 in the morning, He already had the answer written down from before. He did not think it through. He just reread it.
That was the last time she came back.
Even Epictetus did not become a philosopher alone. He needed Musonius Rufus as his teacher for years to become who he was. No one reaches clarity entirely on their own. Sixth step: real professional support. A real therapist genuinely changes the course of the months that follow, and reaching for it is the best documented path to holding on, not a sign of weakness. No one should have to go through what comes after leaving alone, and asking for help now takes nothing away from the strength it already took to get this far. Many cities have specialized counseling centers for victims of psychological abuse, often free, that understand this mechanism better than a general doctor would. Some specialized helplines exist for that specific moment. In the middle of the night, when the doubt comes back and no one around you is awake. What if the fear you feel right now is not a sign that something is wrong, but a sign that you are finally about to do the right thing? How far that fear actually goes is what we answer next. Maybe this time she really does go to therapy, reads books, cries sincerely while apologizing. None of that, on its own, proves a lasting, real change has happened. Psychologists who follow this dynamic for years watch for one reliable signal. Does the change hold when no consequence is about to arrive? Not while you are packing the suitcase. If this question keeps coming back every time you try to leave, for months or years now, the answer was never another change on her part. This cycle, by its own nature, never ends from the inside. The real difference is precise. What you felt at the start, the intensity, the connection, was not entirely fake. A pattern still needs a limit, and what you allow today decides what repeats tomorrow. A relationship like this is never left with one spectacular decision. It is left through a series of small, concrete decisions, one after another, often without telling anyone at first. And the one good piece of news that actually matters here, each of these 6 steps stands on its own. You do not need to master all of them today to start with the first. The first weeks after a goodbye that actually holds rarely feel like the immediate relief you imagined beforehand. They feel more like a wide emptiness. With time, you do not quite know how to fill anymore. That emptiness does not point to any mistake in your decision. It simply matches the space that relationship occupied for a long time. A space that needs time before something more stable fills it. Many people who actually left describe a moment months later when they notice they made a small everyday decision without asking anyone, without even feeling the need to. Some, months later, pick back up an old interest they had abandoned years before, without quite remembering anymore why they ever stopped making time for it. 6 steps, one single goal behind them. That this goodbye is not one moment of courage that fades, but a path built, step by step, that holds when doubt and hope come back. You do not have to leave tonight, or do it all at once. Starting with the first step, documenting, commits you today to that alone and nothing more. Think of one real person. If any of these 6 steps just brought someone specific to mind, that is not a coincidence. Maybe they need to hear that these steps actually exist. Back to that closet, to that half-packed suitcase, to the open zipper. Which of these 6 steps is honestly the hardest for you today? Write it in the comments. even if it is just the number. On the Quiet Stronghold, we take apart a mechanism like this every week, in full detail.